morning at all. My intervent concern on the contribution of botanists for the conservation and valorization of archaeological park and historical gardens. I want begin to asking you what see in the image. Your gaze is certainly attracted by the animal component, while the plant species are seen as a green background. This condition is defined as plant blindness, and it is related to the ancestral condition of the human survival linked to the need to identify dangerous situation. And we know that uh, the plants are not dangerous in the immediate time. This aspect it is important because too often the plant component is underestimated and considered only as a background, when instead, in most cases, it is the protagonist of the landscape. Indeed, from this point of view, also the ministry published technical and scientific criteria guidelines in which specify and define the problem linked to the relationship between the works of art and the environments in which they are placed. So, in archaeological parks and historical gardens, understand the meaning and structure of the landscape. It is important to evaluate the real and potential danger and to plan the most appropriate intervention for the conservation and valorization of cultural heritage, but also to conserve the landscape aspects of naturalistic value if compatible with the archaeological structures. Indeed, know the biology and ecology of the plants allow to understand the interaction between archaeological structure and natural component to prevent potential conflicts because, for example, a critical eradication on weeds can favor the biodeterioration rates, while a controlled coexistence allows to protection of the ruins and of the natural landscape. Indeed, it is important for a correct management, conservation, and valorization of archaeological parks and historical gardens a careful and aware botanical plan that can develop in the design of an archaeological landscape, often characterized by peculiar environmental conditions that generally favor the conservation of biodiversity. This place can be biodiversity hotspots. What is a place with a high richness of species, but also a refuge, that it is a place in within rare species can find protection and survive. Indeed, in this area can be kept particular habitat that permit the survival of endemic species, increasing the global value of the area, has from a cultural point of view, but also from a naturalistic point of view. For example, the special protection area and the sites of community interest, SPA and 6, constitute the network Natura 2000, conceived for the purpose of protecting European biodiversity through the conservation of natural habitats, animal and plant species of community interest. Here we can see 4 Italian sites, 2 important historical gardens of Rome, Villa Pamphili and Villa Borghese, such as 2 UNESCO sites as La Banditaccia and Monterozzi that are Etruscan necropolis. Well, these 4 sites are sites of community interest. 6, because presents habitat and rare species that must be protected at national and international level. So, in particular, we can see the case of the UNESCO site of Monterozzi, the Etruscan necropolis of Monterozzi. We detected 167 different plant species and an high plant biodiversity with a still remaining naturalness and interesting relictuality features. It was evident in this case as, in order that the flora and the vegetation in the site are strongly influenced by the weeding intervention. So, as in other semi-natural environments, good management practice must be chosen to guarantee their protection and balance the possible risk linked, linked to the direct or indirect growth of the plants on the ruins. Summarizing, to undertake a compromise management line that can safeguard the monumental integrity but also the floristic components. So we suggest to avoid the chemical weeding, but if it is needed, to apply non-weed sprayed way, but zoning and direct application on danger flora. Protect these areas with vulnerable species and, if needed, plant intervent according to the reproductive strategies of these species. It is more important also for the historical garden, and I want to highlight two charter, the Venice Charter and the Florence Charter, because they clearly explain their historical and cultural value, but also the importance of the vegetal component. In fact, we can read that it is living and has such perishable and renewable. Because I want to highlight this point because sometimes in the management and conservation of historical garden, this aspect it is not so considered. In a garden, the plant play a central role, and their design in the place respect the history, the culture, and their changes over the time. As previous specified, the plants are living organisms with their biological and ecological characteristics. Their phytogeographic and taxonomic specificities represent fundamental elements. In the recovery of this value, the role of botany is fundamental, but not unique. The interdisciplinary intervent, it is fundamental in the planning, conservation, and management of the site. So we can see different example. In this case, I want to explain the problem that now the historical gardens are living because you can see this plant, it is Buxus sempervirens. Buxus sempervirens, it is a very fundamental plant species plant in the historical gardens because it was used for the art topiaria in the Roman garden, but also for the border of flower beds in Renaissance garden, and in particular in the Italian gardens. In fact, we can see the Italian garden of Villa Pamphili, the secret garden of Villa Pamphili, and all the border was are formed by Buxus sempervirens. What is the problem? The problem is that now the Italian Buxus is at extinction risk due to the introduction of an alien species of insect. This insect, Cidalima perspectabilis, eat the leaf of the Buxus when it is in the larval stage of its life. So this insect, it is casually introduced because it was introduced with the marketing of Japanese plants of buxus. So these conservation problems, it is not only for the Italy, but also for the other European historical garden. When it not respect the autochtonicity of the species, these kind of mistakes can arise. This management and conservative problem is due to the neglected attention to respect the autochtonicity and historic value of the plant species component for the historical garden. And now we have a problem of extinction of the species. We can see here other two different problem of plant in the historical garden. The first one, it is the example related to the reconstruction of a Roman garden of a domus in Pompeii site, in which you can see uh, that was insert in the flower beds a species begonia that is original of America, USA. So I think that can be easy to understand the diachronic problem of this inserted. I think that a similar mistake, it will never have been accepted in a restoration of our cultural heritage, but has instead gone under notice in this reconstruction. Nobody highlight this problem, and all the tourists cannot understand the problem that it is related to this reconstruction. The other one, it is the Villa Celimontana in Rome, a Renaissance historical garden, in which the superintendent decided to use Laurus nobilis to recreate art topiaria. But this species grew rapidly in spring, so it was never chosen for this practice because the fast growth don't permit to conserve the artistic form of the art topiaria. Okay, in fact, the buxus was chosen in the past because the buxus have a very low growth, and for this motive in the modern time he is decided to introduce the Japanese species because they have a little fast growth respect to the Italian, because in the modern era we have not time to wait that the plant grow, and it is another problem. At last, I want to show an example of the remembrance parks and avenues. This is an example of modern historical garden in Italy. This kind of avenues and parks was established by the government, the Italian government, that wants in all the city must be planted one tree for each died soldier in the First World War. And moreover, the government want that these trees, these parks and these avenues must be a deductive activities. So the trees must be planted by the elementary students, because in this way they have the memories and continues the memories in the time. I want to show this example because now in Italy Many of these parks and avenues are destroyed, transformed, and forgotten. In this case, we can see that the Park of Remembrance in Noventa Padovana, it is completely, the vegetable component, it is completely disappearance. It, it remains only a, a, a message on a tag, not are trees and never of plant component. So, at last, I want to summarize and say that the enhancement of archaeological parks and historical gardens is at first the design that should be follow also a didactic intention to show and highlight the historical landscape, favoring biotic communities of significant interest. Second one, it is the communication of the historic value and naturalistic value and symbolic values of the natural element presence. At last, the roots in which the object of interest is the landscape context. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that I remain in the time and I respect the time.